What would it take for an entire community to simply vanish? Not through violence or disaster, but through something far more subtle and mysterious? Picture a February morning in 1923, where a Brazilian railway platform stands frozen in an eerie stillness. Coffee cups rest on wooden tables, delicate wisps of steam still rising from dark liquid. No station master emerges from his office. No workers hustle to load coffee sacks. The streets, typically alive with children's laughter and daily commotion, lie silent as a whisper. This was Hoer Verde, a name that would soon become legendary. 600 people, seemingly vanished without a trace. Now transport yourself 7 years later, 4,000 miles north. The Canadian Arctic stretches before you, a landscape of endless white and profound silence. At Angikuni Lake, 2,000 people have disappeared, leaving behind a haunting tableau that defies explanation. Half-eaten meals sit on tables, their contents growing cold. Carefully prepared tools lie waiting for work that would never begin. Even the dogs remain chained, waiting patiently for masters who would never return. These are the kinds of stories that have fueled late-night documentaries, whispered campfire tales, and countless internet conspiracies. But the real story? It's far more fascinating than any supernatural tale you've ever heard. Chapter 1: The Coffee Empire. In 1923, Brazil, a nation that didn't just produce coffee, but controlled 80% of the global market. Every morning, millions worldwide would wake up to the rich, dark brew sourced from these distant plantations. This wasn't just a crop, it was the very heartbeat of an economic empire. But what happens when an economic empire starts to crumble? The crash came swiftly and mercilessly. Global coffee prices plummeted, sending shockwaves through entire regions. Brazil's response was nothing short of dramatic, burning millions of pounds of coffee to maintain market prices. Can you imagine watching your entire livelihood go up in flames? Between January and March of that year, something extraordinary happened. Over 50 small communities along the coffee lines were systematically abandoned. Economic pressures drove people toward growing cities, leaving behind entire ways of life. What drives a community to leave everything behind? What invisible forces can compel 600 people to simply disappear? Chapter 2: The Birth of a Legend. Here's a twist that might surprise you. The first whispers of Hoer Verde's story didn't emerge from Brazilian newspapers. Instead, they appeared in Italy's La Stampa in April 1923. Brazil's large Italian community, deeply rooted in the coffee trade, sent letters home describing abandoned villages and displaced workers. As the story traveled across the Atlantic, something magical happened. Economic exodus transformed into supernatural mystery. Empty villages became unexplained disappearances. With each retelling, the mundane became something more mysterious. Warm coffee cups, half-eaten meals, silent streets, each detail added another layer of intrigue. But how does a simple story of economic survival become a legend of supernatural disappearance? Today, those old railway tracks hold secrets far more fascinating than any ghost story. Station logs from 1923 detail every official stop, every scheduled delivery, even the number of coffee bags each train carried. But between these meticulous records lie mentions of unofficial stops, communities that existed in the shadows of the coffee trade. Rusted machinery reveals the daily rhythms of these forgotten communities. Each morning, hundreds of workers would gather at processing stations throughout the region. When the coffee economy collapsed, these machines fell silent, not from mystery, but from economic necessity. What whispers remain in these silent machines? What stories do their rusted gears still tell? 7 years after the Hoer Verde story first emerged, attention turned to the Canadian Arctic. Angikuni Lake, a vast expanse of water in the Nunavut territory, became the setting for another tale of inexplicable disappearance. The Arctic landscape had sustained Inuit communities for thousands of years. Their seasonal movements followed ancient patterns, tracking caribou migrations, responding to weather changes, adapting to the rhythm of the polar year. What might look like abandonment to outsiders was actually a sophisticated survival strategy passed down through generations. But something changed in the 1930s. Something that would transform these traditional ways of life forever. How do entire communities adapt when their world transforms around them? What invisible pressures can move 2,000 people to seemingly vanish into thin air? Chapter 5, The Trapper's Tale. November 1930 brought us Joe LaBelle, a fur trapper intimately familiar with these lands. When he stumbled upon an empty village near Angikuni Lake, he couldn't believe his eyes. Abandoned tools, untended fires, food left mid-preparation, his account in the Halifax Herald would capture imaginations worldwide. Yet, here's where the first crack in the mystery appears. Those 2,000 vanished people? Impossible. The largest recorded communities in this region numbered no more than 100 to 150 people. What transforms a simple story of migration into a tale of supernatural mystery? Chapter 6, Beneath the Northern Lights. The Hudson's Bay Company trading posts tell a story far more complex than any supernatural tale. Imagine the Canadian Arctic of the 1930s, a landscape of profound transformation. New trading posts emerged like constellations across the frozen terrain, drawing communities away from their traditional territories. Government policies were quietly reshaping human landscapes. Permanent settlement became the new directive, challenging centuries of seasonal migration. Think about the immense pressure this placed on traditional Inuit communities. How do you maintain a way of life when the very ground beneath your feet is changing? Seasonal migrations weren't simply a choice, they were a sophisticated survival strategy. Each movement was carefully calculated, tracking caribou herds, responding to subtle changes in weather, reading the landscape with a wisdom passed down through generations. What might look like abandonment to an outsider was actually a delicate dance of survival. Consider the broader context. This wasn't just happening in the Arctic. Around the world, traditional communities were facing unprecedented challenges. Industrialization, government policies, economic shifts all were conspiring to reshape human experience in ways never before seen. Chapter 7, The Journalist's Web. Here's a fascinating detail that might surprise you. Emmett Kelleher, the journalist who broke the Angikuni Lake story, never actually visited the site. Not once. His article became part of something much larger, a wave of north of 60 stories that painted the Arctic as a land of endless mystery and supernatural wonder. Between 1928 and 1932, Canadian newspapers were filled with hundreds of similar tales about the mysterious North. But these weren't just entertainment. They were a way of transforming complex social and economic changes into digestible narratives that Southern readers could consume with their morning coffee. Think about the power of storytelling. How do we make sense of profound social transformations? By turning them into narratives that captivate, that explain, that make the incomprehensible feel just a little more understandable. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Two vanishing villages. Two different continents. Two distinct environments. Yet these stories mirror each other in the most extraordinary ways. Both emerged during massive social transformation. Both involved communities adapting to economic pressure. Both transformed social upheaval into supernatural mystery. The 1920s and 30s witnessed something unprecedented: human movement on a scale never seen before. Traditional communities everywhere faced the same pressures: industrialization, modernization, centralization. Hoer Verde and Angikuni Lake weren't isolated incidents. They were windows into a global wave of change. Imagine standing at the crossroads of history. On one side, traditional ways of life. On the other, a world rapidly transforming. How do you choose? How do you survive? These aren't just stories from a distant past, they're playing out right now, all around us. Villages in Japan empty as young people chase urban dreams. Pacific Island communities relocate as seas rise. Rural towns across America slowly fade into memory. The only difference? We now have cameras and satellites tracking every step of these modern migrations. Technology has changed, but the fundamental human story remains the same: adaptation, survival, transformation. Consider the villages you know. How many have changed beyond recognition in just a few decades? How many have disappeared entirely, their stories becoming whispers passed down through generations? Walk through Sao Paulo's bustling streets today, and you're walking among the descendants of those coffee workers. Visit Nunavut's modern communities, and you'll see how Inuit culture adapts and evolves. These villages didn't vanish into mystery, they vanished into the future. Perhaps this is why these stories touch something deep within us all, that eternal tension between holding on and letting go, between preserving the past and embracing the future. Change might feel mysterious and frightening, but it's the one constant thread in human history. Every abandoned village, every empty street, every silent trading post holds within it a story of human resilience. The real mystery isn't in the disappearance of these villages. It's in humanity's endless capacity for adaptation, for transformation, for renewal. Every vanished community holds within it the seed of a new story, waiting to emerge. In the end, we are all travelers. Sometimes we move by choice, sometimes by necessity. But always, we move forward. As the mist of time parts, we see not a story of disappearance, but a story of continuous becoming. What stories are we creating today? What migrations and transformations will future generations turn into mysteries? Even now, tales of vanishing communities spread across the internet. Ghost cities in China. Abandoned towns in the American West. Underground communities in Australia. Each generates its own mythology, its own mysteries. But here's the real question: what if every unexplained mystery in your social media feed has a similar story? What other tales of the supernatural might actually be windows into profound human experiences? Think about it. How many other legends might be hiding stories of human resilience? Of communities facing impossible choices? Of people adapting to unstoppable change? The truth behind these vanishing villages challenges us to look deeper. To question not just what we believe, but why we believe it. What other mysteries might reveal themselves to be powerful human stories in disguise? We want to hear your thoughts. What local legends in your community might hide similar stories of adaptation and change? What mysteries have you grown up with that deserve a deeper look? What mysteries have captured your imagination? What unexplained stories keep you up at night? Tell us in the comments below which historical mysteries you'd like us to investigate next. Whether it's a local legend from your hometown or a global mystery that's always intrigued you, we want to hear your suggestions. Your story might be our next investigation. Join us on this journey of discovery. Subscribe to our channel for more investigations that challenge what we think we know about history's greatest mysteries. Like and share this video to help others question the stories we tell ourselves about the past.